Story 1. It happened in the fall of 2017. I remember because the air had that crisp smell of drying leaves and cold asphalt. I was driving back from my cousin's place in Kentucky, cutting through a stretch of rural Tennessee. My dog, Rex, was riding shotgun, panting softly with his head out the window. We were maybe 2 hours from home when the fuel light came on. I passed a small green sign for an exit and decided to take it, hoping to find a gas station close to the freeway. About a mile down, there it was. A worn-out, independently owned gas station, one of those with a faded Coca-Cola sign hanging from rusted chains. There was only one pump working, and no other cars in sight. I didn't see any other buildings nearby, just empty fields and a long stretch of cracked road vanishing into the woods. I pulled up to the pump. Rex stayed quiet, which was unusual. He normally barked or perked up in new places, but he sat rigid, staring at the glass windows of the small building. The station looked abandoned at first. The lights inside were dim, yellowed like they hadn't been changed in years. The glass was smudged and covered in dead bugs. Still, the pump worked. I swiped my card and started filling up. That's when I noticed him. A man, standing just on the other side of the pump island. He wasn't there a second ago. No car, no sound of footsteps. Just there. He was maybe in his 50s, wearing a dark flannel and jeans that looked too stiff, like they hadn't been worn in a while. He didn't look homeless or threatening, but something about him felt wrong. His skin was too pale, like he hadn't been in the sun in years. He was staring at me. Or maybe at Rex. I nodded, trying to be polite, but he didn't move or blink, just stood there, arms limp at his sides. The gas clicked, signaling it was full. I glanced down, and when I looked back up, the man was gone. Now, it's not like he could have just disappeared. There was nowhere to go. The only direction he could have walked was behind the building. I leaned back into my car, pet Rex for a second. Then, curiosity getting the better of me, I walked around the side. Nothing. No one. But there was a door at the back of the building, slightly ajar. I paused. It was probably just the owner, I told myself. Maybe he walked around to check something. Still, I had this awful feeling in my chest, like I was about to open something I wasn't supposed to. I decided against it. As I walked back to my car, I glanced at the glass window again. The inside of the building was visible now, but what I saw froze me. It was a security monitor wall, the kind gas stations use to watch the pumps. Every screen was showing static, except one. That one showed a perfect image of me, standing at the pump, except the timestamp was from 3 days ago. Same clothes, same dog, same position, same empty station. I got in the car without looking back. Rex was whining softly now. I pulled out, tires crunching on loose gravel. As I glanced in the rearview mirror, the man was back, standing in the exact same spot, watching me leave. I didn't breathe until we hit the freeway. I called the local sheriff's office later, just to ease my mind. The dispatcher didn't hesitate. That station's been closed for 4 years, shut down after a fire, no power, no one should be out there. I asked about the cameras. Burned up, place doesn't even have electricity. To this day, I don't know what I saw. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe I imagined it. But Rex never liked car rides again after that. He still stares out windows like he's waiting for something to appear. And I don't stop for gas after dark anymore. Ever. Story 2. In the winter of 2019, I was driving across Nebraska on my way to visit my sister in Colorado. Snow had been falling for hours, and the roads were getting slick. I wasn't in a rush, so I decided to stop at a gas station just outside a town called Elkhorn Bluff, barely a dot on the map. It was the kind of place you only find when you're lost or desperate. The building looked like it was once a mechanic shop, converted into a half-convenience store, half-service garage. The signage out front was sun-bleached and cracked, and the lot was empty except for a snow-covered Jeep with no plates. I left my car running and went inside to grab coffee and maybe stretch my legs. The second I stepped in, I noticed the silence. Not the normal quiet of an empty store, but a complete absence of ambient sound. No hum of coolers. No low music from a radio. Just nothing. Behind the counter sat a man who barely glanced up. He had a long, expressionless face and hands that were too big for the tiny register keyboard. I gave a small wave and got a grunt in return. I wandered down the first aisle. The shelves were weirdly well stocked for such a remote place. Brands I didn't recognize, labels in strange fonts. The kind of stuff that looked just familiar enough to make you second guess whether you'd seen it before. Then I got to the freezer aisle. I opened the door for a bottled water, and that's when I noticed something was off. There was a mirror on the back wall of the freezer unit. At least, I thought it was a mirror. When I moved, the reflection didn't quite match. I turned my head and the reflection turned a second later. A lag, like a bad video call. I froze. I waved my hand slowly. The reflection copied it, but with the wrong hand. My left became its right. I shut the freezer door and stepped back. The glass fogged up instantly, and when it cleared, the mirror was gone. Just a regular freezer wall. I looked back at the counter. The man was watching me now, wide-eyed, mouth slightly open, like he'd been holding his breath. I walked back up slowly, trying to act normal, but his eyes followed me like he was terrified for me. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked, voice low. I stopped. "Saw what?" He reached under the counter and pulled out a thick black binder, slapping it down. It was labeled Freezer Log. He flipped through it, page after page of handwritten entries with dates, times, and brief notes. 12:03 girl vanished. For 2 mins came back older. 01:14 mirror wrong again. 02:11 something else reflected. Not me. He pointed to one page and said, "You were lucky. Sometimes it doesn't give you back." I stared at him, thinking maybe he was high or mentally ill. But the sincerity in his voice, I don't know, it chilled me more than the air outside. I put the water on the counter and reached for my wallet. He shook his head. "Take it and go. Don't come back." I didn't argue. As I walked back out into the snow, I passed the Jeep. The snow had melted off it since I'd gone inside, completely. The engine was still cold, but there was no snow on the windows, roof, or hood, like it had been somewhere else for a while. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove without stopping until I hit a Denny's outside of Denver. I sat in the booth for hours just trying to convince myself I imagined it. That the silence, the freezer, the binder, maybe it was a stress dream brought on by driving too long in the cold. But here's the thing that keeps me up. When I looked in the mirror in the Denny's bathroom, I noticed something subtle. So subtle, I thought I was going insane. My reflection blinked, just a fraction of a second after I did. Story 3. This happened back in 2021, when I was driving home from a weekend hiking trip in northern Arizona. It was late, probably close to midnight, and I had been pushing myself to make it back before sunrise. I was low on gas and caffeine, so I pulled into a small roadside station off Route 64. It was one of those gas stations that still had analog pumps and a flickering neon sign. The inside was fluorescent lit and stale, with buzzing lights and a row of empty booths near the coffee station. There was only one attendant, a tired-looking guy who didn't even look up from his phone when I walked in. I grabbed a bottle of iced coffee, paid quickly, and asked where the restroom was. He just pointed down the hallway behind a faded employees only sign. I hesitated, thinking maybe he misunderstood me, but he didn't even glance up. So I walked down the hall. There were 2 doors, one marked men, the other women, both with peeling paint and those plastic signs you can buy at office supply stores. I went into the women's room. It was cleaner than I expected. A single stall and a sink, with one of those push-button faucets that gives you 3 seconds of lukewarm water. I went into the stall, sat down, and just took a breath. That kind of tired breath that feels heavier than sleep. That's when I heard it. Someone breathing. I froze. The stall next to mine was empty when I came in. I would have heard the door if someone else entered. But now, there was a steady, shallow breath coming from the other stall. I leaned forward slowly, trying to see under the divider. No feet, just mine. But breathing continued, slow, wet. I said, "Hello?" as calmly as I could. No response. But the breathing stopped. Then, tap. Something tapped once on the metal divider between stalls. Not hard, just a single tap, like a fingernail. I stood up, suddenly alert. My heart was pounding now. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone came in while I zoned out. Maybe the sound echoed weird in the pipes. But when I stepped out of the stall, the room was empty. I checked the other stall. It was clean. No one inside. I turned to the mirror above the sink and nearly screamed, because for just a second, in the reflection, the stall door behind me closed by itself. But when I turned around, it was open. I didn't wash my hands. I didn't even dry them. I just pushed the bathroom door open and walked quickly down the hallway back toward the front of the store. The clerk was gone. The register was still lit, the receipt tape slowly curling onto the floor, but the guy was nowhere. Not behind the counter, not outside by the pumps. No car, no sound. I left. I didn't even get gas. I drove the rest of the way home on fumes, shaking. I didn't stop again. Later that week, I tried to look up the station. Couldn't find it on any maps. Not even satellite view. Just blank desert. I even retraced my steps the next month on purpose, but there was nothing at that exit. No buildings. No signs of construction. Just dirt, brush, and a broken road that ended at a rusted gate with no name. Sometimes I still hear that sound when I'm alone in a public restroom. That breath. That single, deliberate tap on the wall beside me. Story 4. It happened in the summer of 2022, during one of those long, solo road trips I like to take when life starts feeling too noisy. I was coming back from a small coastal town in Oregon, somewhere near Brookings, when I stopped at a gas station nestled between a cliffside and the dense edge of the woods. It was already dusk, and the sun was bleeding orange through the tree line. The station was the only building for miles. A squat, gray structure with 2 pumps and a glowing, open sign that flickered like it was trying to warn me. I pulled in, filled my tank, and went inside to grab a snack. The place smelled like old coffee and mildew. The shelves were mostly empty, with odd gaps like someone had just cleared out random items. Still, I found a bag of trail mix and a cold soda. As I went to pay, I noticed something strange. The cashier, a girl who looked maybe 19, pale with short-cropped hair and tired eyes, was already printing out a receipt. "I haven't paid yet," I said. She looked at me, confused. "You already did." I glanced down. The receipt she was holding had today's date, my car make and model, down to the bumper sticker, and a list of items I hadn't picked. A lighter, beef jerky, and a disposable camera. I laughed a little, thinking maybe she made a mistake, but her face didn't change. "That's yours," she said flatly. I took it from her, half out of curiosity, and froze when I saw the timestamp. It was marked exactly 3 minutes from now. I turned the paper over, hoping for a clue, some joke or misprint. But there was only one thing on the back, in pen, like someone scribbled it right after the receipt printed. "You should leave now." I looked up, thinking she'd explain, but the cashier was gone. No sound, no door chime. She just wasn't behind the counter anymore. I walked quickly to the exit, trying to shake off the weirdness. Just a prank, I told myself. Some bored kid messing with travelers. But when I stepped outside, the light had changed. The sun, which had been sinking over the trees, was now completely gone. In a matter of what should have been minutes, it was pitch black. I checked my phone. No service. The clock was blinking 0 o'clock. I got into my car and turned the key. The engine cranked, struggled, then finally caught. I didn't even bother putting on my seatbelt. I just peeled out of that lot and back onto the highway, not caring if I was speeding. But about a mile down the road, something in my rearview mirror caught my attention. The lights of the gas station were still visible. Still glowing. Still flickering. Even though I should have been well past seeing them. The road curved. The terrain changed. But every time I looked back, they were there. Like the station was following me. Or worse, I wasn't moving at all. Eventually, I passed a highway sign for a different town. Only then did the lights vanish from the mirror, like someone flipping a switch. I drove through the night and didn't stop again until morning. When I checked my phone again, everything was working. The time was right. The location was accurate. But the receipt was still in my pocket. Only now, the ink was smeared. The timestamp had faded, and the message on the back had changed. It now read, "Next time, you won't leave." Story 5. This was in 2019. I was on my way to visit my sister in rural Pennsylvania. Her place is way out near some old mining towns, miles from any interstate. I left after work, later than I should have, and somewhere around midnight, I realized I was running low on gas. I hadn't seen another car in maybe 20 minutes, so I was relieved when I spotted an old, dimly lit gas station tucked behind a grove of pines. It looked half abandoned. One of the pumps had caution tape wrapped around it. The other was functional, but clearly dated. Numbers rolled like an odometer when the fuel flowed. Still, it was open, or at least the lights were on, and I wasn't in a position to be picky. As I started fueling, I noticed a man on the other side of the station, maybe 30 feet away. He stood perfectly still, beside an old sedan, hands in his pockets, just watching. I gave a little wave, the polite kind you give to strangers at night. No reaction. He didn't even blink. I glanced away, pretending not to be bothered. Told myself he probably worked there or was waiting for someone. But he never moved. Not when I went inside to pay. Not when I came back out. Just standing there, not pumping gas, not talking on the phone, not even checking his car. Just watching. That was the first time I felt it. The weird, lizard brain kind of fear that has no real justification. Just instinct. I got in the car fast, not even bothering to check my tire pressure like I'd planned. As I pulled out, I looked at him one last time. He was standing in the same spot, but his head had turned. Now he was watching me drive away. I checked my rear view until the station disappeared behind the trees. My heart was racing, but I laughed it off. Told myself maybe he was just high, or weird, or dealing with his own stuff. Maybe he didn't even realize how creepy he looked. But 20 minutes later, I passed another gas station and nearly slammed on the brakes because it was the same station. Same broken pump, same flickering sign, same trees, and the same man, standing beside the same car, staring at me. I didn't stop. I sped past, rubber squealing as I took the curve too fast. I must have checked my GPS 5 times, but it kept rerouting, glitching out every time I passed that turn. I started recognizing the bends in the road before they came. I saw the same billboards, same roadkill, same broken branch in the middle of the shoulder. I passed that station 3 more times, and each time the man was closer to the edge of the lot, just standing, always watching. No other cars on the road, no signs of life anywhere else, just that one fixed point, like a loop I couldn't exit. The 5th time I saw it, I stopped. I don't know why. Maybe I was done being scared. Maybe I just wanted to confront it. Confront him. I pulled into the lot, headlights off, engine idling. But the man wasn't there. The car was there, same sedan, dusty, with a missing hubcap. But the man was gone. I sat there for a minute, waiting. Nothing moved. No wind, no bugs. Just the soft hum of the idling engine and the overhead lights flickering like dying stars. Then I saw him. In the mirror. Not in front of me. Not beside me. Behind. My car. Not moving. Just standing directly behind it. In my blind spot. I didn't even look. I floored it, tearing out of the lot like a man possessed. I didn't check the GPS again. I didn't stop for hours. Eventually, the station never reappeared. But that man, I still think about him. Not his face. I never really saw it. But the way he stood, too still, like he was waiting for something. Every now and then, at random stations, random towns, I catch sight of someone just standing by a pump, not doing anything. And I always wonder, what if he's not stuck at that station? What if I am? Story 6. This happened in 2021, just outside of Taos, New Mexico. I was driving cross-country with my dog, Bishop, a sweet old mutt who'd been my road companion since college. We were heading toward a trailhead to camp for a few nights when I realized we needed fuel. I saw a sign for a 24-hour gas station and exited. It was around 3:40 a.m., the kind of quiet hour when the world feels paused. The station sat low against a flat stretch of desert. No other buildings around, just black highway and orange dust. Only one pump was lit, Pump 4. I pulled in and stepped out. Bishop whimpered slightly, something he rarely did, and leaned against the window to watch me. I gave him a calming gesture, then walked over to swipe my card. But the card reader didn't work. I looked inside. The place was lit, but no one was at the counter. I opened the door and a bell chimed, loud, shrill, like it echoed too long in the empty space. The station looked untouched, clean even, shelves full, lights buzzing. But no one. "Hello?" I called out. "Just trying to pay for gas." No answer. I looked behind the counter. Cash register open. A cup of coffee sat steaming slightly, like someone had just been there. That's when I heard it. Faint, crackling static. It was coming from one of the speakers overhead. It wasn't music, not a radio. Just static. Soft at first, then rising. I backed out, unnerved, and went back to the pump. That's when I saw Bishop. He was no longer in the passenger seat. The window was up, door shut, but he wasn't inside. My stomach dropped. I started shouting, calling his name, circling the car and the station in a panic. The desert was still and dead quiet. Then, from inside the station, I heard the bell chime again. I turned, and Bishop was standing just inside the glass door, tail down, ears flat. I bolted for the entrance. The second I touched the handle, the lights inside shut off. All of them. It was pitch black inside. I couldn't see Bishop anymore, just my reflection, eyes wide, breath fogging the glass. I yanked the door, locked. Then the static started again, louder now, bleeding through the walls like the station itself was humming. I pressed my face against the glass. Nothing. No movement. "Bishop!" I shouted, fists pounding. Suddenly, the light snapped back on. Everything exactly where it had been, except no Bishop. He was just gone. I rushed inside. No sign of him. No paw prints. No barking. No open doors. Just silence. Then the screen on the pump behind me blinked to life. White text on a gray background. Paid in full. I ran to it, confused, shaking. I hadn't pumped a drop of gas. My card hadn't even worked. But the handle was in its cradle. Nozzle dripping. The car's fuel gauge. Full. I didn't wait around. I tore out of there, calling Bishop's name until my throat was raw. I drove up and down that stretch of highway for hours. Nothing. Not even a sign the station had ever existed. When the sun came up, I finally pulled into a police station in a nearby town. Told them what happened. They looked at me like I was insane. "There's no gas station out that way," one of them said. "Hasn't been for years." I pulled out my phone to show them the receipt I thought I'd seen print out. But there was nothing. No charge, no GPS pin, just a picture in my camera roll I don't remember taking. It was of Pump 4, just the pump, no station, no car. And in the background, barely visible in the corner, a blurred shape that could have been a dog or a man crouching. I've never seen Bishop again. And sometimes, when the night is quiet, I swear I still hear that faint, awful static.